What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So OP-12 has been out for a while now, and in this video I want to compare OP-12 to the two prior sets that came out, OP-11 and EB-02. We're going to take a look at booster box price, we're going to take a look at the top hits in every set, and we're just going to have a bit of a conversation about which one you should be investing in. And I'm also planning to do this kind of for every set in one piece here, maybe in the next couple weeks, just because we've had some increases in price, not just on booster boxes, but also on some of the top hits in certain sets. And I think that's kind of shifted where I rank maybe a couple of the boxes. But for this video specifically, we're going to take a look at OP-12, we're going to take a look at EB-02, and we're going to take a look at OP-11. So we'll start off with EB-02, the oldest one. The box is sitting around $206, $207 on TCG Player. I've had a couple people ask me in my comment section over the past couple weeks, what is this site, TCG Player? TCG Player is kind of like the card market of North America. If you guys don't live here, it's where a lot of people sell product, whether it's sealed booster boxes. I wouldn't say as many individual cards like raw singles sell on TCG Player, at least not the higher end ones. The lower end cards that are more playable do tend to move, but the higher end ones like mangas and stuff, you're probably going to have to sell on eBay. But a lot of people still use TCG Player kind of as the benchmark in terms of price. Normally, eBay and Facebook Marketplace, you can find things cheaper, maybe even at your local LGS, whatever. But it's a really good resource for us in North America. And honestly, whether you like it or not, the North American market does have influence on basically everything else in the world that happens. That's not me trying to be superior in any way, but the reality is when it comes to TCGs, a lot of the other markets tend to follow what happens in the North American market. And obviously there are differences and stuff, but this is why it's such an important resource when it comes to looking at TCGs and investing into these games. And honestly, for you guys that don't live in North America, maybe you live in Europe or Asia, wherever, Africa, Australia, shout out to you guys who watch from all other parts of the world, South America, you can use my videos and what's happening in TCG Player kind of as like a head start, right? To make your decisions. It's giving you some lead time there if you want to buy certain things, more than likely. But that's really all I wanted to say about TCG Player. It is a legit website. We use it a lot in TCG. So on TCG Player, sitting around $206, $207 per booster box. And this is, of course, in USD. And we've seen sales get up to around 210 now. So this box is continuing to climb slowly, which is a good sign. When we look at the top cards in the set, we've been over this a lot. You have the Gear 2 Luffy manga up top. You have a Boa Hancock SP, Vegapunk SP, which is the error card. And then you have Yamato, the Alt Luffy, Jewelry Bonnie, lots of these other SP card leaders that are very expensive. Basically, the entire first page is cards over $100, except for Kyros down here, which is at like $98, $99. So basically, a $100 card. Now, when we look at the top hits, because I do want to say this before we get into the numbers, which you can see here, we have the set, we have market price of the booster box, top 1, top 5, and top 10 values. Some of these top chase cards should probably be a little bit more expensive. And what I mean by this is on TCG Player, the market value of the Luffy currently is $1,065 on TCG Player. However, the most recent sales of this card are pushing almost $1,500. One lower one here at $1,130. But $1,400, $1,230, $1,100, $1,800, that's in a PSA 10, $1,200 raw, another at $1,200 raw. So when you average it out for the near mint copies, it should be higher than $1,065. Same thing with the OP-11 Gold Luffy. You can see here, TCG Player price around $2,400, $2,387. But when you come in here and look, most recent sale near mint copy, $3,700. Crazy. This might have been a PSA 10 sale. That's just not marked as that. If not, it's an extreme outlier. But before that, a couple days ago, 2,700, 2,500, 2,700, 2,800, 24. So it's clearly higher than 2,387. But I think when we look at the numbers and the point I'm trying to make in this video, it's not super relevant, but just know that these numbers are off slightly just because TCG Player does take some time to catch up, especially if a card doesn't sell too often on the platform. But EB-02, you can see here a top 10 value of $3,400 approximately. It's probably closer to $3,500 at this point. And the top card, the top chase, is over $1,000. So that's a fairly strong set, all things considered, in one piece. It's definitely not the top set in terms of overall depth, but it's up there. It's a pretty respectable set. A lot of that has to do with difficult pull rates. There not being as much EB-02 out there compared to some of the mainline sets like OP-11, OP-09, etc. Now, OP-11, this is a mainline set, meaning it's not a premium booster or an extra booster, and this is sitting around $142 currently, and it's made a very strong rebound over the past couple months. If we do the 3-month chart here, after release in late June, early July, I believe it was sitting around $120-ish. We're now back up into the 140s, which is a great sign. You can still find this box cheaper though at a lot of stores in Canada and probably even in other parts of the world. But recent sales on TCG Player were actually closer to 145. Either way, this box is cheaper than EB-02 currently by a decent amount, and the top hit is more than double what the Luffy manga is in EB-02. And also when we look at the top 10 value, it's higher than EB-02 by over $1,000, which is fairly significant. Now, the one caveat I want to bring up here is that when we look at the top like 20 or 30 cards in these sets, EB-02 definitely catches up. So for example, this first page of EB-02, like I said, basically all the cards are over $100. If you go to the second page, you have, I think, probably like 8 or 9 more cards over $50. Whereas when we look at OP-11, sure, the top 10 hits are pretty solid, but after that, it drops off very fast. You're already down to cards at like $36, $35. The last card on the first page is $11, right? And EB-02, it's the Kyros at about $98. And generally in other games like Pokemon, for me, the cards outside the top 10 aren't super relevant, but that's a bit different in One Piece just because there are a lot more cards worth, $100 to $200 to $300, and even cards in like the $40 to $60 range, I'd say, on average in a set. So it definitely is more relevant to look at the top 20 to 30 cards in a set in One Piece compared to some other games. But the point I'm trying to get at here is that these two sets are a lot closer than I think a lot of people believe they are. And quite honestly, if you only look at the top 10 cards, you would be doing a disservice to how strong of a set EB-02 is. So hopefully that makes sense. If you guys have questions about that, obviously you can leave a comment down below. I'll try and clarify better. I know I'm rambling a little bit in this video. But finally, let's move on to OP-12, the newest set that's come out here. And actually, one more thing I did want to bring up about OP-11, just going through a couple of the top cards here. We already talked about the gold Luffy, how it's selling for a little bit more. The silver Luffy, we're up to almost $1,200 on TCG Player. The most recent sales are still in that range, maybe getting closer to $1,300. The one card, though, that is interesting, the Stussy SP, this is sitting around $90-ish now. About a month ago, you could have been buying this card for around $50, $55. I don't know if this is becoming a meta card. I would assume if it's doubled overnight that it probably is. But if you guys have any information on it, definitely feel free to leave a comment down below and educate us. Either way, I just wanted to throw that in here because I thought it was interesting. Now moving on to OP-12, this box is down to sub $100 currently, $99.43. When this set released, I said that I would not be surprised if this box got down to around $100, maybe even cheaper. It makes sense, right? Just based on what the set is. It's a mainline set, so it's not a premium booster. It's not an extra booster. We're getting Wave 2 already. I think a lot of stores in Canada have just done pre-orders over the past couple weeks. So it makes sense that the box price has come down a lot. And I think at most of your local stores, you can probably get it even cheaper than $99, $100 currently. But in terms of prices, this makes a lot of sense. Now, when we look at the card list in OP-12, this is probably better than what a $100 booster box should have inside of it. For example, the Blackbeard gold and silver cards are the top chases in the set. The gold card is currently going for around $835, and most recent sales are probably closer to like $750, $760 actually. So it's still on its way down, but it's going to be a decently expensive card. Same thing with the silver one, I would imagine $690. Most recent sales, yeah, closer to like 600-ish, 620, maybe 645 on a good day. But the Jewelry Bonnie manga, this is the third most expensive card, has actually rebounded a little bit here. You can see after release, I think it was down in the mid threes, and now it's selling fairly consistently around 400. Sure, you have a few lower sales. This was a light played, so it might have had a bit of damage on the back or whatever. Near mints are going for around 4 though, and it's holding strong at that point. But compared to other $100 booster boxes in One Piece currently, which Royal Blood, this is around $97, so it's about the same price. Two Legends is actually up to around $107 on TCG Player, but again, it's fairly close in terms of price, so I want to group these together. When we look at Royal Blood, there's not a lot inside the set, right? Like you have the T-Law manga up top, $340 in that range. You have the Whitebeard SP, which is awesome. A new Sohachi SP, a Sanji SP. The artworks for these are all great, but they're not super expensive cards. Same thing with Two Legends. When we go over here and look, you have the Silver Israeli manga up top, $260 now. It's continuing to come down. You have a Jewelry Bonnie SP, 118, an Ace SP, a Tashigi, a Charlotte Pudding. Like, again, these are great characters. They're fairly popular, but you don't have huge heavy hitters in this set that are bringing the value that we see in a set like OP-12 with the Blackbeard Gold and Silver or the Jewelry Bonnie manga. And this all leads to the question which set I should invest in, because I actually got that comment a couple times over the past week, like, hey, what do we know about these sets that justifies the entry point, right? Like, how do we decide if we should buy a box at $100 or if it's still worth at $150? And my response to this is that it's kind of feel at this point, right? Which is probably a bad way of putting it when we're looking at things from an investment standpoint. But I'm going to try and do my best to explain to you what I mean here. So when I look at these three sets as an example, we have EB-02, we have OP-11, we have OP-12. We can look at market prices. We can look at the value of the chase cards inside of them. My philosophy for investing in TCGs, and you can go look at Pokemon, you can go look at Magic, you can even look at One Piece and look at the booster boxes that have performed the best over time so far. The sets that have performed the best generally have the most depth in terms of chase. They have the most expensive top chase cards. They have solid supporting cards. So OP-09, you have the 5 mangas. PRB-01, you have all the manga reprints. OP-01 Blue Bottoms, a little bit of a different story. It's the first set. There's not as many of them out there. We have the alpha and beta boxes. But for the most part, PRB-01, OP-09, even OP-05 at this point, now getting close to $300 again, it makes sense why those sets are more valuable because they have the better chase cards. Those sets tend to, when we look at the annualized ROI, do better than the average set in One Piece. And that should make sense to most people, right? If you're given the option to buy OP-09 or OP-12 for the same price, say $100 USD, which one are you going to buy? 99 out of 100 people are going to pick OP-09 from an investment standpoint, right? However, things change when the market prices aren't the same. So currently, when I look at these prices, OP-12 is around $100. I'll bring up the booster box again, just so we don't have to stare at this one document. OP-12 around $100. We have OP-11 at around $140, let's say, and then EB-02, let's say around $200. When I look at these three sets currently, I think that the most expensive booster box in the future is going to be EB-02. The reason for that, it's a specialty set. Bandai has proven that they're not really willing to reprint their specialty sets. I think when you look at the top 20 to 30 value of the cards, it actually outperforms OP-11. I'm pretty sure it overtakes it eventually. However, when we look at which option to buy, I think it's very close right now between OP-11 and EB-02 based on current prices. So if I was given the option to buy OP-11 at $140 versus EB-02 at $200, $205, I would probably split my investments. I would buy a little bit of both at those prices, if that makes sense. Now, if OP-11 was $200, EB-02 was $200, I'd be taking EB-02 all day long. If OP-11 was, say, $110 again, and EB-02 was $205, I'd probably want to buy a lot more of OP-11, maybe do like an 80-20 split at that point, if that makes sense. But if I'm given the option of all three of these sets, including OP-12 at current prices, I wouldn't be buying any OP-12. I would just focus only on doing EB-02 and OP-11 currently, because my philosophy on investing in TCGs is to take the sets that have the better chase cards that are dominant in that sense. Now, if you have a different philosophy, and there's a lot of people who follow my page who've written comments before, they like to buy sets when they're cheaper, they want to limit their downside risk, and that's awesome. So if that's you and you want to buy the cheaper boxes because they really don't get much cheaper than, say, like $70, $80, you limit your downside, buying OP-12 might be a decent option for you. And if that's what you're thinking of doing, buying the cheaper boxes, OP-12 is an absolute no-brainer right now. Like, given the option between OP-12 at $100, Royal Blood at $100, and Two Legends at $100, I would only buy OP-12 in that sense, because the set, when we look at the depth chart, is far and away the best, the deepest, with the most desirable cards compared to Royal Blood or Two Legends. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense to you guys. It really depends on your philosophy in TCGs, in One Piece, what you want to buy. Now, in terms of where I see OP-12 going in the future, I don't think it's going to go much lower than $100 just because there are so many legit cards inside of the set that will have value. I mean, realistically, the Blackbeard, Gold and Silver, and the Jewelry Bonnie manga, these are all going to be cards that combined have a value over $1,000 easy, probably closer to $1,500. I don't think it's ever going to drop lower than that. Now, you do have some decent SPs, nothing crazy. Like, you don't have $200 SPs like you see with the Nami in OP-09, the Boa Hancock in 09, the Nami in 05, etc. So I think if you're given the option to buy a case in the $100 range, if you can get it cheaper than that, great. But if you're buying around $100, I think you're going to do fairly well over the next couple of years. But you guys let me know in the comment section down below what you think. Do you own any OP-12? Currently, I don't. I'll probably pick up a box in the future just for display purposes, but I just think there's better places to put my money right now, whether it's in One Piece or in Pokemon. If you guys did get some value out of this content, I'd really appreciate if you leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. It helps out a ton. Also, we'll be back tomorrow to do the lower tier eBay auction update video, basically everything under $1,000. And if you do want to take your investing to another level and you want to check out my market spreadsheet, links in the description down below as always. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Stay safe wherever you are in the world, and I'll catch you in the next one.